Snow drifted across the quiet streets of Springdale, Arkansas, on the morning of January 3, 2026, casting the town in an almost cinematic stillness. Yet beneath the deceptive calm, tension crackled through the Duggar family's household and stretched into the federal courthouse just miles away. For years, viewers had known the Duggars as a reality television family, a symbol of religious devotion and moral certainty. Cameras, curated appearances, and tightly controlled narratives had presented one version of reality, but that version was incomplete. Documents, subpoenas, and federal scrutiny now threatened to expose layers of decisions, concealments, and consequences that television never captured. Inside the courthouse, Josh Duggar faced allegations under federal review that demanded precise legal evaluation, careful analysis of evidence, and coordination across multiple law enforcement agencies, including the Department of Justice, the FBI, Arkansas State Police, and Homeland Security. These investigations were not perfunctory. They were meticulous, probing financial records, communications, and prior complaints. The scrutiny reached beyond Josh Duggar himself. The family's patriarch, Bob Duggar, now found decades of influence and authority subject to unprecedented federal examination. Anna Duggar, Josh's wife, occupied a silent, tense position in the gallery, navigating a complex intersection of marital loyalty, public exposure, and legal risk. Jill, Jessa, Jana, and Joy Anna Duggar, siblings whose childhoods and adulthoods were broadcast to millions, watched as the intersection of law, media, and family reputation converged in real time. This case matters today not only because of its immediate legal consequences, but because it illuminates systemic issues that were long hidden behind curated appearances. The Duggars' narrative had long been constructed as one of moral certitude and familial order, yet federal attention revealed how much of that image had been maintained through private management of incidents, suppression of allegations, and careful control of public perception. What viewers thought they understood about the family, about responsibility, and about accountability was only a fraction of the truth. Tracing the roots of this present-day crisis requires moving back into the past, identifying early incidents, understanding family dynamics, and charting the warning signs that were overlooked or concealed. Only by examining these events in chronological and causal context can the full scope of the Duggar family's legal, social, and personal challenges be comprehended. The unfolding investigation represents a convergence of private decisions, public perception, and federal law. It is a story of accountability delayed, of influence wielded in both visible and unseen ways, and of a family grappling with consequences that now extend far beyond the walls of their home. Federal prosecutors laid out the evidence with methodical precision, each document and testimony reinforcing a narrative that extended far beyond individual accountability. Communications allegedly involving Josh Duggar were cross-referenced with financial records, creating a timeline that suggested oversight failures within the household and raised questions about Bob Duggar's role in managing sensitive situations. The federal court, presided over by Judge, name withheld for case integrity, underscored the seriousness of the proceedings, emphasizing compliance, transparency, and the implications of potential violations of federal statutes. The Department of Justice had formally categorized the investigation as high priority, a designation reserved for cases with significant interstate or federal impact. The FBI's Cybercrimes Division was involved, meticulously tracing digital communications, while Homeland Security assisted in examining cross-border financial and communication channels. Arkansas State Police coordinated with federal authorities, providing access to local records, assisting in serving subpoenas, and securing witness testimonies. Each agency's involvement signaled that the matter was no longer a localized family scandal, but a complex investigation with legal, financial, and social ramifications. Public reaction was both immediate and intense. News outlets across the nation dissected every hearing, and social media exploded with commentary, speculation, and analysis. Fans of the Duggar reality series grappled with the disparity between the family's on-screen portrayal and the legal realities now emerging. Critics of the family framed the events as a long-overdue reckoning, pointing to patterns of previous controversies, while some observers cautioned against rushing to judgment, noting that the judicial process required careful deliberation. This duality in public perception highlighted the enduring fascination with the Duggar family, the tension between media representation and fact, and the broader implications for public trust in televised morality. At the center of the unfolding crisis were specific individuals whose actions, oversight, or inaction were under examination. Josh Duggar, the eldest son, faced direct scrutiny for alleged violations, while Bob Duggar, as patriarch and primary decision-maker, was assessed for his role in supervising, advising, or concealing incidents. Anna Duggar, Josh's wife, remained peripheral to legal liability, but central to familial and public perception. Siblings Jill, Jessa, Jana, and Joy Anna Duggar were examined in terms of knowledge, responses, and the broader influence of the family structure on the unfolding legal circumstances. Michelle Duggar, as matriarch, was likewise referenced in testimony regarding family decisions and oversight. The urgency and significance of the case stemmed not only from the potential criminal consequences, but also from the broader implications for accountability, transparency, and institutional responsibility. This was a case that illuminated the collision between private authority and public scrutiny, between familial influence and federal law, and between long-standing public perception and the realities revealed under meticulous investigation. Federal subpoenas continued to unearth communications that had previously been confined to the private sphere, including emails, text records, and financial statements. Each new piece of evidence contributed to a growing mosaic of oversight, responsibility, and consequence. The DOJ, FBI, and Homeland Security teams coordinated with forensic accountants, legal analysts, and federal clerks to ensure that every detail, no matter how small, was examined within the context of federal statutes, prior complaints, and precedent. The federal court maintained strict oversight, issuing directives that emphasized procedural adherence, the safeguarding of evidence, and the necessity for unbiased consideration. In this present-day crisis, the Duggar family's history, public image, and internal dynamics converged under the unyielding scrutiny of federal investigation. The implications extended beyond one individual or one family. They posed questions about institutional oversight, the responsibilities of public figures, and the ways in which private decisions can accumulate into significant legal consequences. The case remains highly relevant because it represents a rare intersection of family influence, legal accountability, and public transparency, forcing both the Duggar family and the nation to confront the reality that private decisions, when scrutinized at the federal level, have profound and lasting consequences. The story of the Duggar family's current crisis cannot be understood without tracing its origins, stretching back more than 2 decades. In 2002, when the family first emerged into the national spotlight through reality programming, the public encountered a household that appeared orderly, devout, and guided by strict moral principles. Bob and Michelle Duggar were portrayed as pillars of conservatism, overseeing 10 children in a regimented environment designed to exemplify virtue and obedience. Yet behind the carefully constructed public image, subtle tensions, conflicts, and warning signs were already beginning to emerge. By 2006, isolated incidents involving Josh Duggar had begun to surface within the family circle. Sources close to the household indicate that concerns were raised internally regarding behavioral patterns inconsistent with the family's strict moral code. These were addressed privately, often minimized or rationalized by Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar. At the time, the family structure, with numerous children, tight control over schedules, and a centralized parental authority, created an environment in which such incidents could be contained, discussed internally, and shielded from outside scrutiny. The eldest children, including Jill and Jessa Duggar, observed these interactions and, in some instances, were drawn into conflicts of loyalty, witnessing both enforcement of rules and the selective concealment of issues. In 2010, the pattern of internal conflict became more pronounced. Allegations that could have warranted external review were instead managed privately, often involving counseling, restricted communication, or in some cases, relocation within the household. Family meetings, though outwardly framed as guidance and moral instruction, functioned to reinforce the existing hierarchy and suppress disclosure. Younger siblings, including Jana and Joy Anna Duggar, were witnesses to both compliance and concealment, internalizing a framework in which family cohesion was prioritized over transparency or accountability. By 2015, additional incidents involving Josh Duggar had become more complex, intersecting with digital communications and online interactions. The family's approach remained consistent. Incidents were addressed internally, sometimes with the involvement of private advisors or family friends, but largely hidden from external authorities or public view. Internal conflict arose not only around individual behavior, but also in response to the growing visibility of these actions within family discussions. Siblings expressed concern, disagreement, or confusion, yet these voices were often subordinated to parental authority. The family's hierarchy effectively prevented early incidents from escalating into formal legal investigations, leaving warning signs unexamined in a public or systemic context. By 2021, prior events, spanning nearly 2 decades, had accumulated into a complex web of concealed incidents, behavioral patterns, and internal oversight failures. While the public remained largely unaware, these early warning signs formed the basis of subsequent federal scrutiny. Evidence that would later be central to investigations, including communication records, testimonies, and financial documentation, had origins in these earlier years. Analysts reviewing the timeline note that consistent concealment and rationalization of incidents created a structural vulnerability, wherein private management of misconduct deferred accountability and allowed behaviors to persist under the radar of law enforcement. The Duggar family structure itself played a central role in the concealment of early warning signs. With Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar at the helm, their 10 children, including Joshua, Jana, Jill, Jessa, Jinger, and Joy Anna, were subject to a strict hierarchical system. Parental authority dictated both the resolution of internal conflicts and the framing of acceptable behavior. Older siblings often bore responsibility for younger ones, reinforcing oversight within the household, while simultaneously being drawn into moral and ethical dilemmas as they observed preferential concealment of certain incidents. In this environment, children's perceptions of right and wrong were shaped not only by moral instruction, but also by selective disclosure, ultimately contributing to the long-term accumulation of unaddressed issues. The federal investigation into the Duggar family's activities formally began in early 2021, when law enforcement agencies were alerted to potential violations that had persisted over the previous decade. Initial reports indicated that certain communications and financial transactions involving Josh Duggar warranted federal review, prompting the Department of Justice to initiate preliminary inquiries. The DOJ, recognizing the multi-state implications of the allegations, coordinated with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Homeland Security, and Arkansas State Police to ensure a comprehensive examination. The involvement of multiple agencies reflected the seriousness and complexity of the case, as well as the need for expertise across cyber, financial, and investigative disciplines. The FBI assumed responsibility for tracing digital communications, including emails, text messages, and social media interactions, seeking evidence that could establish patterns of behavior over time. Homeland Security assisted in analyzing interstate communications and potential cross-border financial transactions, ensuring that any federal statutes potentially implicated were thoroughly examined. Arkansas State Police provided local support, facilitating access to records, securing interviews with witnesses, and coordinating with federal teams to maintain continuity in the investigation. The federal court in the Western District of Arkansas became the primary jurisdiction overseeing the case, issuing subpoenas, monitoring compliance, and establishing deadlines for evidence submission. Investigators employed a combination of techniques designed to reconstruct events with precision. Digital forensics teams examined mobile devices and computers, recovering deleted messages and metadata that could reveal timelines, contacts, and decision-making patterns. Financial analysts reviewed bank statements, transactions, and account ownership, identifying potential irregularities or evidence of concealment. Witness interviews, conducted under oath, helped clarify relationships, responsibilities, and the degree of knowledge possessed by various family members. In each step, federal authorities sought to establish a chronological sequence of actions that could substantiate or refute allegations. The investigation spanned multiple locations and states. While Springdale, Arkansas, remained the epicenter of activity, records and communications extended into neighboring regions where family members lived, attended school, or maintained financial accounts. Federal court proceedings were centralized in Fayetteville, Arkansas, but investigative teams traveled to collect documents, interview witnesses, and verify evidence across state lines. The coordination between jurisdictions ensured that no critical piece of information was overlooked and that all potential federal violations could be assessed within the appropriate legal framework. As evidence accumulated, a clear timeline began to emerge. Early incidents from the mid-2000s, initially managed privately within the household, were now documented and contextualized through recovered communications and financial records. Each subsequent incident, previously obscured or rationalized by family authority, contributed to a pattern that investigators could analyze systematically. By late 2021, the DOJ had compiled a comprehensive overview, highlighting the interplay between individual actions, parental oversight, and structural concealment. This evidence formed the foundation for federal subpoenas, testimony requests, and ultimately the formal charges that brought Josh Duggar before the federal court in 2026. Throughout the investigation, agencies maintained strict procedural adherence. Digital forensics followed chain-of-custody protocols, interviews were recorded and transcribed under federal supervision, and all evidence was cataloged to preserve authenticity. The collaboration between DOJ attorneys, FBI analysts, Homeland Security investigators, and Arkansas State Police ensured a thorough, multi-layered approach that balanced legal rigor with factual precision. As each document, testimony, and recovered record was added to the federal case file, the narrative of events became increasingly detailed, connecting decades of internal family decisions to the legal and public consequences now unfolding. The investigation's progression revealed not only the trajectory of Josh Duggar's actions, but also the broader dynamics of the Duggar family as a whole. Each step illuminated patterns of authority, concealment, and oversight that had persisted for years. By tracing the timeline from early incidents to federal intervention, investigators were able to establish a coherent, evidence-based account that contextualized both the legal and social dimensions of the case. It was a meticulous reconstruction of decades of family life, filtered through the lens of federal scrutiny, designed to ensure accountability, transparency, and compliance with the law. The year 2023 marked the first significant federal hearing in the Western District of Arkansas. presided over by Judge, name withheld for case integrity. The courtroom was tense, charged with an unusual mixture of public scrutiny and solemn legal formality. Josh Duggar, once the eldest son and moral exemplar of the Duggar household, faced a series of federal charges arising from investigations that had spanned more than a decade. The hearings revealed not only the scope of alleged actions, but also the meticulous work of federal investigators in assembling evidence that connected past incidents, financial records, and communications to present legal accountability. During initial hearings in March 2023, the court carefully reviewed the evidence submitted by the Department of Justice, which included forensic analysis of digital communications, detailed financial audits, and corroborated witness testimonies. The proceedings highlighted inconsistencies between prior family narratives and the documentation recovered through federal investigation. Attorneys for the defense challenged certain procedural elements, while federal prosecutors emphasized the pattern of behavior that had been identified over years. The hearings set the tone for the legal process, demonstrating that the case would not be resolved quickly or superficially. By July 2023, a pretrial motion hearing illuminated further complexities. Judge Name withheld addressed motions regarding evidence admissibility, highlighting the importance of procedural compliance and chain of custody for digital evidence. The court emphasized that every communication, financial transaction, and testimony would be considered in context, underscoring the meticulous nature of federal legal proceedings. The rulings from this stage influenced not only how the case would be tried, but also the strategies of the Duggar family's legal representation. The culmination of these hearings led to the formal trial beginning in February 2024. Federal prosecutors presented a step-by-step reconstruction of events, linking early warning signs, concealed incidents, and subsequent actions to the present charges. Josh Duggar's defense team argued mitigating circumstances, including family guidance, private handling of earlier incidents, and attempts at internal oversight. Witnesses, including family members, provided testimony under oath, offering both corroboration and context for the events spanning more than a decade. Verdicts and sentencing in late 2024 delivered substantial consequences. Josh Duggar was found guilty on multiple counts, reflecting both the severity of the federal charges and the pattern of conduct established through years of investigation. Sentencing included federal imprisonment, fines, and long-term oversight measures designed to prevent recurrence. The rulings were definitive, yet they also reverberated through the Duggar family, affecting relationships, public perception, and internal cohesion. Bob Duggar, as patriarch, experienced profound social and emotional pressure. Decisions made decades prior, once managed privately, were now exposed publicly, leading to scrutiny from media, religious communities, and extended social networks. Anna Duggar, while not criminally implicated, faced the dual challenge of marital support and public attention. Siblings Jill, Jessa, Jana, and Joy Anna Duggar were also deeply affected, navigating the emotional fallout from the trial while confronting the public and private implications of their brother's actions. Appeals and procedural motions extended into 2025, with the Duggar family's legal team attempting to challenge evidentiary rulings, procedural compliance, and the interpretation of federal statutes. The appellate courts, however, upheld the majority of convictions and rulings, emphasizing the thoroughness of the investigation, the consistency of evidence, and the adherence to federal legal standards. Each decision reaffirmed the initial trial outcomes, leaving the family to confront the consequences of both legal accountability and public scrutiny. The courtroom proceedings, verdicts, and appeals collectively represented a turning point not only for Josh Duggar but for the entire family. They highlighted how decades of internal management, concealment, and selective oversight could not insulate individuals from federal accountability. Emotionally, the family confronted stress, uncertainty, and public judgment, while socially, they navigated a landscape in which media narratives, public perception, and private reputation were irreversibly altered. The court's rulings became a definitive marker in the family's history, shaping both the legal and emotional realities of each member. The aftermath of the federal case against Josh Duggar rippled through the family in ways that transcended legal consequences, affecting the Duggar household on emotional, psychological, and relational levels. Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, long accustomed to controlling family dynamics and managing public image, now confronted the weight of scrutiny combined with private anguish. Decisions made decades prior, once contained behind closed doors, were now under relentless examination, leaving both parents grappling with guilt, defensiveness, and the challenge of maintaining cohesion among 10 children. Siblings experienced a profound sense of disruption and emotional strain. Jill and Jessa Duggar, who had grown up observing both parental authority and internal conflict management, reported tension, anxiety, and confusion in the wake of publicized hearings. Jana and Joy Anna Duggar faced similar pressures, balancing their desire for personal privacy with the unavoidable association with their brother's actions. Relationships that had previously been defined by shared upbringing and familial loyalty became complicated by external judgment, media coverage, and differing perspectives on accountability and moral responsibility. Marital dynamics within the household were also affected. Anna Duggar, as Josh's spouse, experienced considerable stress navigating the dual responsibilities of personal support and public visibility. The strain of legal proceedings, coupled with societal judgment and familial expectations, introduced ongoing challenges to emotional stability and marital resilience. Interviews with mental health experts suggest that spouses in high-profile legal controversies often experience elevated levels of anxiety, depressive symptoms, and relational tension, particularly when prior family patterns have emphasized internal management of conflict over open discussion. To address these psychological effects, the Duggar family reportedly engaged in both individual and group counseling, therapy sessions designed to manage stress, anxiety, and emotional trauma. Coping mechanisms included structured communication, mediated family meetings, and gradual reintroduction of transparency in certain family dynamics. For some siblings, therapy focused on reconciling internalized moral expectations with the reality of legal and social consequences, while others addressed grief, anger, and disrupted trust within the family hierarchy. Long-term social and developmental consequences were significant. Younger family members, who had been shaped by strict parental oversight and hierarchical structures, faced challenges in developing autonomy and coping with complex social realities. Peer relationships, educational trajectories, and emerging adult identities were influenced by the combined effects of public scrutiny, family upheaval, and lingering tension within sibling and parent-child dynamics. Mental health professionals emphasize that sustained exposure to familial stress, compounded by media attention and societal judgment, can contribute to persistent anxiety, trust issues, and difficulties in navigating personal relationships well into adulthood. The Duggar family's experience illustrates the multifaceted impact of a legal crisis on familial structures. Emotional and psychological tolls are not isolated to the individual facing charges, but permeate sibling relationships, parent-child interactions, and marital bonds. Interventions such as therapy, structured communication, and mental health support become critical not only for immediate coping, but also for fostering resilience and mitigating long-term developmental consequences. Ultimately, the case underscores that the effects of legal accountability extend far beyond the courtroom, shaping the inner dynamics, emotional well-being, and social trajectories of all family members involved. From the moment the Duggar family entered the public eye in the early 2000s, media coverage shaped the narrative surrounding their household. Reality television provided a controlled, highly curated image, A large, devout family committed to conservative values, children raised under strict moral guidance, and parents portrayed as unwavering figures of authority. Over time, however, investigative journalists, documentaries, and news outlets began probing the gaps between on-screen presentation and privately managed incidents, questioning whether the carefully maintained public persona reflected the realities within the household. By 2015, reports began to surface analyzing past controversies involving Josh Duggar, raising questions about internal management of allegations and parental oversight. Media coverage evolved from light-hearted entertainment reporting to investigative scrutiny, with reputable outlets examining court filings, civil records, and corroborated interviews. Documentaries and in-depth reports explored both family history and the broader implications of their televised image, highlighting inconsistencies and unresolved concerns. Each investigation added layers of complexity, creating a narrative that challenged the public's perception of morality, family cohesion, and accountability. Social media amplified these developments exponentially. Platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, and later Instagram became arenas for debate, criticism, and advocacy. Fans of the Duggar family expressed shock, disappointment, or defense of the family, while critics scrutinized actions, decisions, and systemic failures. Viral threads dissected public appearances, statements, and court documents, transforming individual events into collective discussions about responsibility, oversight, and moral integrity. These conversations often influenced the perception of legal proceedings, shaping both the framing of the case in the public eye and the intensity of media attention surrounding hearings. Investigative reports and journalistic scrutiny played a critical role in revealing hidden layers of information. By collating timelines, interviewing former associates, and analyzing public records, journalists provided context to federal investigations, offering viewers and readers a comprehensive understanding that extended beyond televised soundbites. Reports often highlighted how internal family management, previously unquestioned, intersected with law enforcement oversight, drawing attention to systemic gaps and oversight failures that had contributed to the escalation of federal involvement. Media exposure also affected the family's behavior. Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, along with their adult children, increasingly engaged in public statements, controlled interviews, and social media posts to address controversies, clarify family positions, and manage reputational risk. The knowledge that federal authorities and public opinion were simultaneously observing every development influenced decisions regarding transparency, cooperation, and the framing of family narratives. At times, media scrutiny accelerated legal responses, as attorneys and investigators accounted for public perception in their strategy, ensuring that each step could withstand both judicial and societal evaluation. The cumulative effect of years of media coverage, social media discourse, and investigative journalism reinforced the complex interplay between public perception, private action, and legal consequence. For the Duggar family, it was impossible to separate the courtroom from the court of public opinion. Both arenas shaped behavior, influenced relationships, and contributed to the family's ongoing negotiation with accountability. By 2026, it became clear that media exposure had not merely reported events. It had actively participated in the unfolding of a narrative that intertwined legal scrutiny, social judgment, and the long-term reconstruction of a public image. As the federal case against Josh Duggar enters its next phase, the trajectory of legal and social consequences has begun to crystallize, guided by precedent, statutory requirements, and procedural obligations. Federal sentencing guidelines, established over decades of jurisprudence, dictate the parameters for incarceration, supervised release, and financial restitution. With multiple convictions affirmed through trial and appellate courts, the immediate legal framework anticipates the imposition of sentences consistent with both the severity of offenses and the patterns of behavior revealed by evidence. Future hearings are expected to focus primarily on procedural compliance, potential adjustments to sentencing, and the administration of federal oversight measures. Federal courts may review motions concerning fines, restitution, or specific conditions of supervised release. Appellate avenues remain open for certain legal arguments, particularly regarding evidentiary rulings, the scope of federal jurisdiction, or the application of statutes to multi-state communication and financial activity. However, prior appellate decisions have reinforced the integrity of initial rulings, indicating that any further adjustments are likely to involve technical legal clarifications rather than reversals of substantive findings. Parole and release considerations will also adhere to federal guidelines. Eligibility for supervised release will depend upon factors including behavior during incarceration, compliance with court-ordered conditions, and participation in rehabilitative programs. Federal authorities, in coordination with probation officers, will monitor compliance with restrictions designed to prevent recidivism, including limitations on digital communications, interstate travel, and financial management. Any deviation from these requirements could trigger immediate review and enforcement actions, reflecting the sustained oversight that accompanies convictions of this nature. Socially, the Duggar family continues to navigate a landscape transformed by both public scrutiny and legal accountability. Media attention, social media discourse, and public perception will remain influential factors in shaping the family's reputation, community interactions, and personal relationships. While immediate legal outcomes are now largely defined, social consequences, including reputational impacts, trust within community networks, and relational tensions, are long-term considerations that will require ongoing attention and management by family members. Informed analysis of these developments suggests that the intersection of law, family dynamics, and public scrutiny will continue to shape the Duggar household. Legal compliance, adherence to federal mandates, and active engagement with rehabilitative measures are expected to define the next phase of the family's public and private experience. At the same time, the case underscores broader principles of accountability, demonstrating how actions that were once managed privately can generate enduring legal and social consequences when examined through a rigorous investigative and judicial process. Ultimately, the trajectory of events reflects a structured and measurable sequence of outcomes, grounded in fact, precedent, and legal standards. Each future hearing, supervision period, and procedural review will not only reinforce accountability for individual actions, but also continue to influence the familial, social, and cultural dimensions of the Duggar narrative. The case serves as a clear illustration that private decisions, long hidden from public view, intersect with legal and societal frameworks in ways that demand transparency, responsibility, and enduring attention to both moral and legal obligations. From the earliest days of public attention in 2002, when the Duggar family first appeared on national television, to the federal courtroom proceedings in Fayetteville, Arkansas, in 2023 to 2024, the trajectory of this story reflects a complex interplay of family dynamics, private decisions, and legal oversight. The family's emergence into the public eye presented a household structured by hierarchical parental authority, conservative moral guidance, and a carefully curated public image. Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, the patriarch and matriarch, guided 10 children through a system of obedience, discipline, and internal oversight that shaped early incidents and family responses. By 2006, early warning signs concerning Josh Duggar began to surface within the household, including behavioral patterns that conflicted with the family's moral and religious principles. These incidents were largely managed internally, often minimized or rationalized by parental authority, reflecting a broader dynamic in which private management superseded external accountability. Between 2010 and 2015, as communications expanded into digital mediums, internal conflict became more pronounced, and the family continued to address incidents privately, sometimes through counseling or relocation, while shielding information from authorities and the public. By 2021, these historical patterns became the foundation for federal scrutiny, culminating in subpoenas, document requests, and coordinated investigative actions spanning multiple jurisdictions. The involvement of the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Homeland Security, and Arkansas State Police marked a turning point, transforming private family matters into a federal case with national implications. Investigators traced communications, reviewed financial records, and conducted comprehensive witness interviews to reconstruct a timeline of behavior, oversight, and internal conflict spanning more than a decade. Locations involved included Springdale, Fayetteville, and other areas in Arkansas, reflecting the multi-state nature of communications and financial interactions. Evidence gathered through these methods established a factual basis for federal charges, courtroom proceedings, and appellate reviews. Federal hearings in 2023 and the trial beginning in February 2024 represented legal and emotional turning points. Presided over by the Western District of Arkansas, the courtroom proceedings exposed the depth of familial oversight failures, the accumulation of unresolved incidents, and the consequences of prolonged concealment. Convictions, sentencing, and subsequent appeals reinforced the integrity of federal findings, while illustrating the profound emotional toll on family members. Siblings such as Jill, Jessa, Jana, and Joy Anna Duggar experienced relational strain, anxiety, and disrupted trust, while Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar faced social scrutiny and personal reflection. Anna Duggar confronted marital and social pressures as her husband navigated legal consequences. Public and media responses, spanning traditional journalism, documentaries, and social media discourse, shaped the perception and framing of the family's story. Coverage from 2015 onward, investigative reports, and in-depth documentaries revealed inconsistencies between televised narratives and private realities. Social media debates amplified scrutiny, influenced public opinion, and indirectly affected family behavior, compelling the Duggars to navigate both legal proceedings and societal judgment simultaneously. Psychologically, the case underscores the far-reaching consequences of private management of misconduct. Therapy, counseling, and structured interventions became essential for siblings and parents alike, addressing anxiety, relational tension, and long-term developmental challenges. The case illustrates the intersection of family authority, legal accountability, and social exposure, emphasizing that unaddressed patterns of behavior can yield enduring consequences not only for the individual involved but for entire family systems. Looking forward, federal oversight, supervised release, potential appellate motions, and compliance with legal mandates define the next stage of accountability. Parole, release conditions, and long-term monitoring are structured within established federal guidelines, ensuring that oversight extends beyond incarceration and continues to address risks, responsibilities, and rehabilitation. Socially, the Duggar family remains under public scrutiny, with reputational, relational, and cultural consequences continuing to unfold. This story is far more than the narrative of one family. It serves as a lens into the intersection of private authority, systemic oversight, and public accountability. It illustrates how decisions made behind closed doors, managed internally over decades, can accumulate into complex legal, social, and psychological consequences. It highlights the roles of institutions, from the Department of Justice and federal courts to investigative journalism, in maintaining societal checks on behavior, especially when public personas and private realities diverge. Ultimately, the Duggar case leaves audiences with a cautionary reflection. Actions deferred, concealed, or rationalized within private systems can reverberate across legal, social, and psychological domains. From Springdale, Arkansas, to the federal courtrooms in Fayetteville, this timeline demonstrates that accountability, transparency, and vigilance are not abstract concepts. They are imperatives with tangible consequences. The story compels consideration not only of individual and familial responsibility, but also of the broader societal structures designed to protect, observe, and intervene when private actions intersect with public welfare. The Duggar family's saga is a testament to the enduring truth that privacy and power, if unchecked, carry consequences that extend far beyond the walls of any household, and that the pursuit of accountability, through law, media scrutiny, and public consciousness, remains both necessary and inescapable. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for the latest updates, and stay tuned for more exclusive news right here. Stay with us.